On December 14, 2016, 28-year-old Edgar Madison Welch walked into a Washington, D.C. pizzeria with a semi-automatic rifle. Firing 3 shots and yelling that he wanted to search the place, Welch looked around the restaurant, including its storage area in the basement, and surrendered to the growing number of police which were arriving at the scene. Why did Welch want to search the Comet Ping Pong Pizza restaurant? If you haven't already heard why, hold on to your hats, or tinfoil helmets as the case may be. Welch petrified the people inside the restaurant and ultimately served 4 years in prison because he wanted to see if there were trafficked children in the basement. What's more, Welch was sure these children were the victims of a ring, which was run by the leading Democrats in Washington, including Hillary Clinton, her chief of staff Ron Podesta, and other leading Democrats and leading liberal figures were actually intelligent lizard people bent on taking over the world. The scariest part about this whole thing, hundreds of thousands of other people believed what Welch did, or some version of it. Welcome to the QAnon conspiracy cult. When asked about QAnon and other strange belief systems spreading through not only American but European societies as well, most people will say something like, "That's nuts, it'll pass, and those people are crazy." That may very well be true, but we've already seen this show. It happened in 1933 to 45 in Germany, and though the cast and most of the ideas were different, history records the terrible damage that can follow when enough people believe in crazy ideas, or are too afraid to speak out against them. Well, the details are different, and the media used to spread ideas is different, but from the late 19th century until 1945, bizarre theories about the origins and place of the German people in the universe spread like wildfire. Many leading Nazis believed them, or at the very least parts of them. In today's video, we'll try to explain a little about the Nazis and their occult beliefs. The topic is large, multifaceted, and complicated. We're going to tell you about some of the basics. Webster's dictionary defines occultism as belief in or study of the action or influence of supernatural or supernormal powers. Occultism can include anything from seances to fortune-telling. It also includes the study and perhaps worship of pre-Christian gods. It also includes the belief that runes, the alphabet of many early Germanic people, carried a mystical power. To those who believe the runes, and there are a variety of them, not all of which were created in ancient times by the way, are a window into the supernatural. The right working of the runes is supposed to put a person in touch with the supernatural in the form of the gods or the essence of what the rune means. Occultism also includes the belief that certain places contain different types of power, some deriving from nature, others from supernatural beings. In this, occult beliefs are not so different than many religious beliefs, including Christianity. However, in the case of the Nazis, especially SS chief Heinrich Himmler, the power they wished to tap into was the power to conquer the world and enslave everyone deemed inferior to the German or Germanic group of people. The roots of the Nazi movement and its belief in the occult go back to the last part of the 19th century. At the time, many countries in Europe, especially in Germany and England, were in the last years of the Romantic movement, which had begun at the beginning of the century as a reaction to the rapid industrialization of the continent and the technological changes beginning to affect the lives of people from the wealthiest to the poorest. Romanticism wasn't concerned with romantic love, though those stories with their strong emotions and many times emotionally driven actions were popular. Romanticism was a rejection of what many people saw as the triumph of science over human life and human nature, for the historical period before the Romantic Age is called the Age of Reason by historians. As they saw it, science, logic, and reason were at work removing the joy, spontaneity, and depth of feeling of human existence, and the Romantics were determined to exalt the human emotion, from love to fear to hatred, before science and reason snuffed it out. By far the most well-known Romantic era figure is Ludwig van Beethoven, whose music exalted the individual and their emotions above all else. Coming a close second to Beethoven and other Romantics was nature and the power of nature. Another basic belief of many Romantics was that Christianity was anathema, or opposed to human nature and the soul. They blamed Christianity, especially in the form of Catholic Christianity, for many of the world's ills. A small subsection of the Romantics, especially in Germany, took to worshipping nature, and a smaller number took to worshipping or at least honoring the pagan gods of Germany and the Germanic people, which included the English and Scandinavian people. In the era before they took power, the Nazis tapped into these feelings and this movement. They sponsored nature walks for both youth and adults. They criticized Christianity, what they called its false morality and pacifism. They also called the religion a destructive foreign influence with an outlawed Jewish rabbi at its head. This would be Jesus Christ. At the same time, they spread the old idea that Jesus was killed by the Jews and that the Jewish people, for this and other reasons, were subhuman and the enemy of the German race. You understand what you just heard, right? On the one hand, the Nazis condemned Christianity for weakening the Germanic race. On the other, they blamed the Jews for killing Christ. This makes no sense logically, but politically, the Nazis appealed to anti-Christian sentiment on one hand and anti-Semitic Christians on the other. There is a long list of people who influenced Nazi belief in the occult. Some of them were Nazis themselves, like original Nazi Party member Dietrich Eckart, who Hitler regarded as a mentor. Others included Rudolf Hess, the deputy Führer, who eventually flew to England in a bizarre effort to negotiate a peace treaty in 1940. Guido von List, 1848 to 1919, was a poet and philosopher who was one of the founders of a movement called Aryosophy, along with Jörg Lanz von Liebenfels. Von List is the man who suggested long before Hitler that the swastika be used as the symbol of German anti-Semitic movements. Aryosophy was a term coined by historian Nicholas Goodrich Clark in his 1975 book, The Occult Roots of Nazism, which is still considered the authority on the subject. Von List, who was Austrian like Hitler, and Liebenfels developed pseudo-scientific ideas, some of which they claim came to them in visions in trance-like states, that the Germanic peoples were the descendants of the Aryans, a light-skinned group of people who had lived in the area of northern India before recorded history. They believed that these people possessed supernatural and or mental powers far beyond what we understand, and that out of both jealousy and fear, the people of the area and the ancestors of the Jews drove them off their land. Where did they go? Why, simple. They went to Atlantis, the mystical and mysterious island mentioned in Greek myth. According to von List and Liebenfels, the Atlanteans built a society so far advanced that normal human beings would think it was divine. But unfortunately, Atlantis was destroyed in a storm, flood, something, and the glorious Aryan civilization that existed there was wiped out. Except some Aryans had escaped and had managed to survive in Germany and Scandinavia, where they remained in hiding, fearing that the Jews and other enemies would find them out. There, these Aryans mingled with the people already there, and bred, you guessed it, the Aryan super race that Hitler and the Nazis and many others believed was superior to all other human beings on Earth. Sound a little wacky? Sure does, but remember, the first thing we told you about in this video is the story of a man who believed lizard people were kidnapping children for sexual assault. In 2016, when science and research are much more advanced than they were during List and Liebenfels' lives. The Thule Society was a semi-secret organization which began just before World War I. The foundation of the Thule Society was the idea of Aryan supremacy, which continued in the form of the Germanic people of Europe. Though many of its ideas were taken from von List and others, the Thule Society believed that there was another place, the land of Thule in the far north or even in the Arctic, that was the birthplace of the modern Aryan race, thousands of years ago. Thule was said to be the capital of a lost continent, Hyperborea, which was a home to the Germanic race before it was lost. They took their evidence from a tale from the Roman writer Virgil, who mentioned an Ultima Thule in his writings. Most historians believe that Virgil was writing of Scandinavia. The group was mainly made up of German elites from the right wing, and eventually numbered about 2,000 people, many of them Bavarian, and a significant number in Munich, which was the home of Adolf Hitler after World War I. The Ottoman League was another secret society which began after World War I, though its roots lie in the Romantic movement of pre-World War I Germany. At its most basic level, the Ottoman League believed in the restorative power of nature, particularly the German forests. The Ottomans believed that German youth, especially young men and boys, were becoming soft in the decadent cities, which had grown by leaps and bounds during the dehumanizing Industrial Revolution of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. One of the core beliefs of the Ottomans and other occult-like right-wing groups was that the Jews were behind not only industrialization, but were working actively to destroy the small farm holdings and businesses of German families. During the Nazi rise to power, Hitler and others railed on about the Jüdische Kaufhäuser, the large department stores popping up in Berlin and other large German cities. By the way, most department stores were not Jewish-owned, though the Nazis wanted people to believe they were. One of the main beliefs of the Ottoman League, the Aryosophists, and the many similar groups that existed throughout Germany before and immediately after World War I was a belief in the ancient Germanic gods, Wotan, Thor, Tiwaz, etc. You might recognize these names as Odin, Thor, and Tyr of Norse mythology. Some of the more extreme believers invented rites and rituals they believed were based on old pagan practices that were wiped out in Germany by the Roman Catholic Holy Roman Emperor Charlemagne in the 8th and early 9th centuries. Amazingly, the part about Charlemagne is true. He did wipe out paganism in much of what is now Germany. Many people believe that Hitler was deep into the occult, but the evidence for this is very scant. What is certain is that he did believe in the superiority of the German race, and that he had some notion that the Germans were descendants of the ancient Aryans we've already told you about. Though Hitler had some occult-like ideas about blood and the power of symbols, such as the revolving sun symbol of the swastika, it seems that he was not overly concerned with the mythic details, or lack of them, that became the chief worldview of SS chief Heinrich Himmler and others. The only myths that truly concerned and affected Hitler were those included in Richard Wagner's famous operas, but Wagner himself was a believer in some of the theories you've already heard. Hitler called Heinrich Himmler der treue Heinrich, the loyal Heinrich, and until the very end of the war, Himmler was just that. Film exists of Himmler, Hitler, and others engaged in what seems to be friendly banter on the balcony of the Berghof, Hitler's home in the Alps. But Himmler was never part of Hitler's inner circle of friends where the Führer could let his hair down and talk over a meal, tea, or dessert about art, literature, and much else. Okay, mostly it was Hitler talking and the others listening, but Himmler was never part of this group. Why? Because by all accounts, Himmler made Hitler uneasy. Himmler was known to go off on tangents about some of the things we just mentioned: Atlantis, Thule, Aryans, how the Teutonic Knights of the Middle Ages were actually Supermen, etc. In Hitler's mind, Himmler was a brilliant organizer and a ruthless but loyal tool to be used, and kind of a weirdo. When Hitler thinks you're a weirdo, Well, that's bad. Himmler took over the SS in 1928 and immediately set it apart from its parent organization, the SA, the infamous and thuggish brown shirts. Himmler viewed the SA and its leader Ernst Röhm as uneducated thugs who were useful in street violence against political opponents, but not much else. Himmler helped Hitler eliminate the SA leadership in 1934, long after the need for their street violence had ended. Himmler viewed the SS as a smaller, more dedicated, and more fanatical cadre of men who believed, as he did, that the Aryan race lived on within Germans, and that Germany and its people had to go to war with the Jews and others, especially the Slavs of Eastern Europe and Russia, in order to protect itself from pollution and final destruction. Himmler organized the SS along what he believed to be the lines of the Catholic Jesuit order of priests and monks, what he saw as fanatics dedicated to spreading Catholic Christianity throughout the world and rooting out the influence of Satan. In both cases, the SS and the early Jesuit movements, Jews were considered agents of the devil. Himmler realized that one of the things holding the Jesuits together, aside from their beliefs, were ritual and power places. To this end, he bought the medieval castle of Wewelsburg in the Harz Mountains and set about making it the center of the SS universe. Within the castle, which today is both a youth hostel and World War II memorial, Himmler used slave labor to build altars, statues, engravings, and much else based on Aryosophist beliefs. Swastikas of all shapes and sizes, and the Sonnenrad, or sun wheel, sometimes called the Black Sun, and made up of a series of Sowilo or Sowelo runes, the ancient Germanic runes hijacked Himmler and which came to symbolize the SS. Other ancient runes were used within the castle and were thought by Hitler and some of his men to bestow power on those who believed in them. Despite invitation, Hitler never visited Wewelsburg, and at times called some of Himmler's beliefs quatsch, nonsense, or garbage. Useful garbage though, at least to Hitler. The information on Nazi occult beliefs is both bizarre and extensive. This video has just scratched the surface. We hoped you enjoyed learning about this very strange and sadly quite dangerous set of beliefs. If you did, please like and subscribe to our growing channel.